Welcome to Blueprint for Health and Healing, reversing disease from its foundation. Hi, I'm Dr. John Clark, and today's topic is lung health, a breath of fresh air. A group of people at a church wanted me to talk with what they called their church invalid. I thought that was an interesting title they gave him until I met him. He had had a massive heart attack, he had emphysema from smoking, he had high blood pressure, he had diabetes, and he was on oxygen. Well, I'm thinking this is going to be a hard case. I mean, they want me to help him to recover, and he's got all these problems, and it wasn't his idea, it was theirs. And so I sat down with he and his wife, and we went through what we're going to talk about in this lecture on lung health. I gave him a whole program, including all the points that we'll talk about here, especially exercise and breathing exercises, good food. He went home, he decided this was his opportunity to get back into life. He did everything. Whereas when I met him, he couldn't walk across the room without being winded, even on oxygen. Now, at 2 months, he could walk 1.5 miles. He started gardening. He put in a chicken shed. He got real excited. He started getting off of his oxygen, getting off his diabetic pills. Well, you know, you are what you eat. You don't like what you are. Change what you eat. Change your lifestyle. You can recuperate. You can add years to your life and life to your years. And so he did. And last time I saw a picture of him was on an advertisement for a health camp. Well, that's where we're starting. Somebody who's a lung cripple on oxygen who gets off of it. Did you know this? The power of God is manifested in the beating of the heart, in the action of the lungs, and in the living currents that circulate through the 1,000 different channels of the body. We are indebted to Him for every moment of existence and for all the comforts of life. The power and abilities that elevate man above the low creature are the endowments of the Creator. And so if we can align ourselves with the way that God wants to make us healthy, if we can be in harmony with His laws of health, we can recuperate from a lot of things. I mean, Jesus raised the dead when He was here on earth, so we align ourselves with Him. There's nothing is impossible with God. How important are your lungs? Well, how often do you breathe? Here's somebody underwater, wearing their scuba gear. They know what it's like not to get a breath of air. You know, people don't realize that we only eat 2-3 times a day, at least that would be the expected. Some people eat more frequently. We drink water 3-4 times a day. And certainly we do things like that, but your lungs are constantly at work. You're interacting with your environment about 18 times a minute. And so you want to make sure your lungs are in good shape. I would like to say that maybe your lungs have a bigger importance than some of these other things we've talked about. So we like good food. We like clean water. What about pure, fresh, vitalizing air? And what happens if we breathe air that isn't pure and fresh and vitalizing? The first thing to suffer is going to be your lungs. Now, your lungs give you access to the atmosphere around you. Without your lungs, you can't obtain oxygen. Every cell in your body needs oxygen. Without your lungs, you're in big trouble. But with your lungs, you interface with the outside world. That can be good, that can be bad, depending on what your outside world is like. The lungs are designed by God to provide a buffer or protection from harmful things. Your lungs are full of white cells. That's your immune system that keeps you from getting diseases from your environment. Your immune system is very active, and so you want to make sure your immune system is taken care of. You can find out more about that in our lecture on modern pandemics in this series. So, walking in the fresh air. Oh, how important that is. Walking by pools of water, when there's mist in the air, dew on the ground in the morning gives you more negative ions. A morning walk, there's going to be less pollutants in the air. People haven't gotten out in their cars yet and filled the atmosphere with exhaust. And so a morning walk, I send people out for a morning walk just for their lungs. It's healthier to walk out in the country than in the city. The city has so many people and so many toxins and so many building materials and so many cars and so many, it's a problem. Walking near water, walking outside, walking where there's trees, it improves mental performance. It decreases the risk of dementia. Dementia is when your brain doesn't work right, brain fog, memory loss. And if you have a job outside in the fresh air, there's huge benefits compared to having to work inside under air conditioning. Artificial working environments are not usually conducive to good health, and it's your lungs that will be the first to know this, the first to respond. Now when you live indoors, when you shut all the windows, when you shut all the doors, you have, essentially, you're living in a plastic bag. How long can you live in a plastic bag? Well, I was in a hotel the other day. I looked around and the windows were just glass. You couldn't open it. And I looked up and down the halls. Glass windows only at the end of the halls. I'm thinking, this motel hasn't had fresh air since the day it was constructed. How would it get in here? Well, what do? Well, I went down to the local nursery. I bought 4 plants. I put them in the room. I'll make my own fresh air. And you can do that. And the plants I got were mums, chrysanthemums. They're known, according to some NASA research apparently, that they remove a lot of toxins out of the air and they turn the carbon dioxide back into oxygen essentially. And so you can grow your own fresh air, but the best thing is to have a window that opens, and at night especially. Let's say there's 2 of you in a room. Yeah, mom and dad. And first mom takes a breath of air and she blows it out. Then dad breathes the same air and he blows it out. And then what's happening? Accumulation of waste products, accumulation of carbon dioxide. I had a friend who bought a carbon dioxide meter. He went into his children's room. 2 girls, 1 room, 2 beds, long ways from the central air system. He checked the carbon dioxide levels in the room. It was toxic levels. Might be good to carry one of those on you all the time. I mean, we have smoke detectors. Maybe we should have a gadget on our clothes that tells us when we're in danger. It might make sense, but you know, you don't have to do that. You can just open your windows at night. Get some fresh air coming in. You ever wake up groggy? Oh, it's been a poor night's sleep. And it's probably the window. I mean, I know in my house, if I shut the window, say there's a huge thunderstorm and wind's blowing rain in, and I shut the window, and if I go to sleep and wake up later, I feel like, yeah, I've been in a plastic bag. But if I open the window and get the fresh air in there, I get more benefit from my sleep. And so the lungs are the first thing to be able to tell you about that fresh air. And you know, these hospitals is like that motel room. They don't open. I was in one hospital practicing, and I looked around. I said, come on, there's got to be and I noticed on the window there was a lock you can unlock and flip the window up for washing it. And I said, get maintenance in here, flip that window up. And I had one of my patients that benefited from that fresh air. Yeah, it's important not to get stuck indoors where there's no fresh air. What really highlighted this was the experience of 1918. They had so many patients coming to the hospitals with the pandemics of the Spanish influenza that they ran out of hospital beds. They put overflow facilities out on the hospital grounds in tents like you're seeing here, and the patients would sleep out there. Which seat at the stadium do you get? The high-priced one or the low-priced one? Well, which would be the most expensive bed in the hospital? The one up in 3rd floor or the one out on the lawn? Well, interesting to find out that the people on the lawn did so much better. They survived the flu with such higher numbers that this became the expensive seats, the expensive beds. I mean, this was what people sought after. It became known as the fresh air cure. And so it would be good for a lot of patients to be outdoors. I've had patients who come to me and, oh, I've got this and I got that. My lungs bother me and I got autoimmune disease. And I said, what's your house like? And I ask him, is there any mold in your house? Oh, yeah, I got some mold in my house. What do I do? Well, I said, take and go down to the local shop, buy a tent, pitch it in your backyard, and start living out there. They look at me like, you're crazy. I paid the mortgage on this house. But it makes a difference. If people just be outside more, they'd be more healthy. And, you know, we've had some things happen in our society that haven't helped to breathe fresh air. You can make your own fresh air unfresh by recirculating it in a mask. Put this thing over your face and look at all the physiological and psychological and health consequences of wearing a mask. And you see there hypoxia, low oxygen, hypercapnia, too high of carbon dioxide, under health consequences, increased predisposition for viral and infectious illnesses, headaches, anxiety, depression, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Wow, anybody here remember what Alzheimer's was? Wow, okay, yeah, the disease where you forget. Now, you can also mess up the air in your house by making your house into a chimney. What do I mean by making your house into a chimney? Well, if you're building a fire in there, your house is a chimney. Look at this fire. Where's that come from? Burning hydrocarbons, burning, you know, liquid pressurized gas, whatever, natural gas, propane, and where's the fumes going? All over the house. One day I was working on a project on my computer. I was putting together another PowerPoint. I was researching on autoimmune diseases and that kind of thing. And my wife and son, they decided to put granola in the oven that was going to cook all day and head off to town for a shopping spree. After about 5 hours of that oven going and filling the house with products of combustion, I got sick. I'm like, what is happening to me? And I realized I've been in the smokestack all day. And so opened some windows. I mean, these things have been shown in the studies to definitely damage lungs, decrease lung function, compromise its long-term viability. And so you don't want to use this kind of thing in your house. In our house, we do use a propane stove, but it's outdoors on the veranda. And so its smokestack is the great outdoors. So avoid cooking indoors. Gas, kerosene, yeah. And the other thing that you want to think about is candles. You know, candles are beautiful, they're romantic, but what are they burning? Really heavy, you know, petroleum products or wax products, this affects lungs negatively. Another thing that isn't helpful is if you have mold in the environment. I can't stress this enough, you know. Avoid all contact with mold and mildew as it increases lung diseases by 62%. Can be in your basement, can be in your wall, can be in your roof, can be in your attic, can be in your bathroom, it can be in your clothes. I mean, it's a huge problem, and it wipes out your natural killer cells that are trying to protect your lungs. It makes it so that you have more respiratory tract symptoms, more likely to get asthma, more likely to get the flu. You're definitely in trouble if your lungs are like that. And I'll be in a house that has mold, my lungs will literally burn. I'm like, gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here. But some people are thinking, my house is perfectly fine. It can't be. Well, sometimes it's around your house. Maybe the mold is because the trees are too close to your house. I lived in a house in Maine where there were lichen and all kinds of green stuff growing over the back of our house. So I had to go and get a pressure washer 2-3 times a year and spray it all off. if you have big, heavy shade trees around your house. It makes it so the sun can't cleanse things. You know, the sun is very cleansing. Sun will drive away mold. And so having a house with big windows and good windows that'll open can help reduce this problem. But if you have like a compost heap nearby, or a sewer that you can smell, or you know, you left the leaves on the lawn after the winter, or after the fall. And yeah, so cleaning up the yard is important. You know, taking those leaves away. Anything to help clean your air. And sometimes it's your neighbor that's composting something. There was one person that contacted me, and I was over near their house, and I talked to them, and they said, yeah, our daughter's got this autoimmune disease. I says, which room in the house does she have? Oh, that one over there. What's outside the window? Well, we have the compost heap. I'm thinking, oh boy, what's she breathing? No wonder she has an autoimmune disease. And it will increase autoimmune inflammatory diseases. You want to be in an area that's free from pollution. Our modern environment is full of pollution, especially in the cities, especially during the working hours, especially when you have big factories. And so find some place that has pure air, especially if you're a pulmonary cripple. Now, back to indoor air, it isn't just the fact that you don't get fresh air in there, it's all the building materials. You know, plywood, laminate, this insulation board, carpets, draperies, paints, plastic chairs, and plastic plants. I mean, all these plastics, you're going to have chloroform, acetaldehyde, formaldehyde, dichlorobenzene, styrene. I mean, there's just, you know, methyl chloride, all kinds of things. And what happens is it wipes out your immune system. It wipes out your natural killer cells. It raises the inflammation in your body. It just plain melts you down. And people get sick in these. We call it, you know, sick building syndrome or something like that. And so you'll also get cancer, and lung cancer is, yeah, horrible. So beware. Well, what do I do if I live in an environment like that? Or have to work in that kind of environment? It's a challenge. You better make up for it by good outdoor walks and breathing, and you might want to get some kind of fancy air filter that has a charcoal element to it, and maybe a negative ion element to it, and maybe a ozone element to it, and yeah, maybe even a ultraviolet. They have those. They sell those. They're available. They're probably a second best. You know, you certainly don't want to substitute that for fresh air all the time. But if you know you're cooped up all day in a toxic environment, you better get uncooped come quitting time. Notice the beam on this projector. Yeah, what is it? Well, there's something in the air. And a lot of times this comes from things like dust, breathable dust. Where's breathable dust come? In many people's houses, it's their skin sloughing off. It can come from Aspergillus aflatoxins, or in other words, mold particles. It can come from nitrogen dioxide, that stuff coming out of your gas-burning range. It can come from formaldehyde. So there's a lot of things. If you live within 200 feet of busy traffic, it'll come in your house, it'll affect you, and your lungs will be complaining. And you can either move or, yeah, get some household plants. Notice in the foreground there we have the snake plant, or otherwise known as the mother-in-law's tongue. That's a very good plant for cleaning air. NASA studied that one. The lady's watering her plants, and there's a lot of plants. You can grow your own fresh air. There's books on that. That's the second best also, but yeah. And you know, you're made up of what you eat. What you eat affects your health. Have you heard it said an apple a day keeps the doctor away? Well, you might be surprised to learn that if you eat an apple a day, your lungs are more functional. They have a better volume. You actually breathe 138 more milliliters of air with every breath of air. This is superfood. I've had people say they ate an apple every day and they never got a flu, a cold, or a respiratory tract infection. I think that's worthwhile. Which apple? I don't care which apple, as long as it's fresh. Probably better organic, but if you can't get organic, there's these, good phytochemicals in that, and it'll help you fight infections. It'll help your lungs to be more able to withstand any insults they get from other sources. Now, there's a lot of good food that can be helpful for your lungs, besides apples, and they're good. I mean, grapes, they help fight viruses. Onions and garlic. You notice when you eat an onion, it's almost instantly on your breath? It's because it went to your lungs. And those things are very good for fighting infections. They have quercetin, allicin, they have all kinds of phytochemicals. Eggplant has been said to be very good for the lungs, and asparagus. So there's just a few, and you take those and you'll be in good stead. Another one I like is pineapple. Why? Well, not only does it have a lot of vitamin C, but it has a phytochemical called bromelain. Bromelain is anti-inflammatory. It helps break down fibrosis. Some people get lung fibrosis. And so you would want to be eating these fresh, better than the juice or the canned. And yeah, you ever been to a country where they grow them and you get to pick them ripe? But we get a good supply of pineapples, at least here in North America. And so take pineapple, think of it as good lung food. I mean, any fresh fruit. And the more fresh fruit you eat, the clearer your lungs will be. The more things like fried foods and meats and so forth, the heavier your lungs will be, the poorer your oxygen carrying capacity will be, the more you'll have oxygen deficits in your bloodstream. Good food favors good respiration, favors good oxygenation. And it's interesting, if you eat a lot of oils, it takes a lot more oxygen in the digestive process. You're going to be more at a deficit. You're going to require more oxygen. And there's certain minerals that also will help you with your lungs in fighting some of these bugs, these viruses that attack your lungs, like the flu. Selenium is a good food. You can get it from natural foods, nuts and seeds, especially Brazil nuts, or you can take it as a supplement. But I prefer the natural sources. They increase natural killer cells. Those are the white cells that help protect your lungs. It decreases inflammation caused by what we call cytokines. It helps protect your lungs should you get a flu. Keeps them from getting as damaged. It helps them to recover more quickly. So, a lot of good things that help your lungs. Now, while there are foods beneficial to the lungs, others can be a detriment to the lungs. Here we have somebody eating a high-fat food, fried chicken. So you want to avoid free oils because it decreases the oxygen carrying capacity of all your red blood cells, and it increases inflammation. It takes more oxygen from the lungs to digest these fats. These oils are especially hazardous to the lungs, especially fried oils, especially if you're in the room while they're frying. It raises the histamines. Histamines are responsible for things like asthma and other lung disorders. These fried oils will cause this, and you're wondering why you have to take an antihistamine all the time. Eat fried chicken, take an antihistamine. Eat fried chicken. Well, let's stop that cycle. And quit. I mean, are the antihistamines really helping you? If they were, wouldn't it just take one pill and the rest of your life you're cured? Doesn't work that way. You're causing this by the way you're feeding yourself. So let's look at oxygen levels here. This is a graph where we're going to look at time after eating these high-fat meals. We're going to look at the oxygen on the brain. That has to come from the lungs. We'd like the oxygen on the brain to be somewhere between 90 and 100%. And if we eat a high-fat meal, such as cheese as pictured here, then the oxygen falls below 70% at 6 hours. What's more, it doesn't return to normal for 3 whole days. I mean, that's 3 days without your brain, 3 days with low oxygen levels, 3 days, and people just keep doing this all the time, so they never really come back up to a normal level, and the brain never quite functions correctly. Some people have never had a fully functioning brain, so how would they know they're living in a fog, a brain fog? No, you don't want that. You want to eat lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, grains, beans. and avoid these refined processed foods. I mean, isn't letting somebody processing your food, I mean, you think about it. Anything people get involved in tends to deteriorate it, not improve it. And so beware, beware. Okay. Cheese. I had pictured cheese at the top of that graph because cheese is very hard on the lungs. It's high in fat, it's fermented fat, it's definitely will increase your histamines, asthma patients. Oh, I had one lady come to me. She was in her 20s, and she'd been an asthmatic for 15 years. And she wanted to consult with me. I talked to her about her whole lungs, like we're talking here, and I mentioned cheese. She says, I eat cheese every day. I says, would you be willing to give it up, at least for a trial, to see how it worked? Yeah. And so she did. A week later, she came to see me. She says, within 1 day of stopping cheese, my asthma went away. I'm like, wow, that's dramatic. I wouldn't even have expected it to happen that fast. But anyway, quitting cheese can be very beneficial. I've had people tell me, yeah, I had rheumatoid arthritis till I quit eating cheese. I mean, it raises inflammation in your body. It's going to go to your joints, it's going to go to your lungs, it's going to go to your brain, it's going to go all over. And you don't want this food. I mean, it's already got inflammation in it. It came from a cow. The cow must have been inflamed. Well, I mean, the food got inflamed as it fermented. It's sick food. It's got bacterial infections, it's got fungal infections, it's got viral infections, and you take and eat it. What do you think you're going to get? Bacterial infections, fungal infections. Yeah, anyway, you get the idea. Now, for those of you who are prone to reach for the salt shaker at every meal, be aware that a high salt intake reduces tissue oxygenation too. That means your lungs are going to have to be more efficient. And what do they usually put with your French fries? Not only oil, but what? Salt. Oh boy, so French fries should be called something else, right? Well, some derogatory term, right? Yeah, so you don't want that to happen, and the salt increases inflammation, especially in the lungs. Why in the lungs? Because salt increases inflammation in blood vessels, and there's a lot of blood vessels in your lungs. Fermented foods increase lung compromising inflammation. People don't always realize what they're eating that is fermented. Things like coffee. Yeah, they have to ferment those beans. It's not a fresh product. Chocolate, very fermented. Soy sauce, they purposely put fermenting things in it to create it. Vanilla beans, they ferment for about 6 months to 9 months before they can either powder them or extract them or put them in alcohol for your vanilla flavoring. Brown rice syrup. Malt syrup, cheese, wine, vinegar, just to name a few. So, you lung cripples, take those off the list. What do I take instead of coffee? Take a herbal tea, like maybe a peppermint tea. What do I take instead of chocolate? Try some carob. What do I do instead of soy sauce? I say take garlic salt. What do I do instead of vanilla? Maybe some maple syrup. Same thing for brown rice syrup, maple syrup. What do I take instead of cheese? Maybe you want to eat some nuts. What about instead of wine? Well, how about just eating grapes? How about instead of vinegar? Well, how about lemon juice? Yeah, there's substitutes. And so pick the substitute, use it. Lemon juice is going to be a lot better for your lungs. It's antioxidant. It's high in vitamin C. It's fresh, especially if you squeezed it fresh. And so benefits. Smoking, I mean, you kind of know that's not good for the lungs. Most people realize that. The cigarette packs tend to tell you that. Well, maybe I'll switch to marijuana. Well, it's actually worse for your lungs. It'll give you cancer a lot faster. That's not good. And people who are more active, not sitting around at their computers like this guy, have better pulmonary function compared to sedentary people. Sort of makes sense. When you sit, you tend to cramp. When you sit, you tend to have poor posture. When you sit, you don't get active. You're not moving about. Your lungs aren't being drawn upon for more oxygen for the activity you're doing. And so, yeah, your lungs become cramped and have trouble expanding and get fibrosed. And so don't sit around all the time. Don't compromise your lungs. Get outside. Get moving. Maybe you need a bicycle exerciser in front of that a TV or computer or whatever device, and if you don't pedal, it doesn't turn on. There you go. That sounds interesting. I've seen one of those before. That's what I think of that. An important consideration is your posture. If I'm bent way over, my lungs get cramped. This is sort of the problem with osteoporosis and becoming kyphosed. If you stand up straight, then your lungs are good. Put your shoulders back. When you walk, stand up straight. Put your shoulders back. Put your head as high as you can. And this gives your lungs more volume, more freedom to expand, better exchange of oxygen, better lung health. Really, walking is the best exercise. And frequent walks through the day might be better than one long walk. And there's helpful breathing exercises you can do while you are walking. And I'll just illustrate here a little bit. This is something that the singers do to be able to hold out the long notes for a longer time. This is what people who are going to climb Mount Everest without oxygen do. And what they do is they count their steps, sort of as a metronome or a timepiece, to gauge their breathing. And so as they're breathing in, and I'm going to make a loud noise breathing in. You don't want to make a loud noise breathing in, but if I make a loud noise breathing in, you'll know I'm breathing in. And I take a few steps. Let's say I start walking and I'm counting my steps. There, I'm clear full of air at 3 steps. Then I blow it out over the next 3 steps. I don't take a big breath and then take my 3 steps. I take the breath while I'm stepping. And I do that for a few cycles. That's what I had the gentleman that I'm talking about at the beginning of this talk that got off of oxygen and started walking, worked his way up to walking 1.5 miles in 2 months. I had him doing this. And so, breath in over 3 steps. Oh, I'm not quite full. Let's try a 4th. All right, and you keep adding a step. And as you walk, 3 steps in, 3 steps out, 3 steps in, 4 steps in, 4 steps out. Work your way up. I mean, you can get up to 14 steps in and 4. You just build as you can. And this expands your lungs. You're sort of at the top of your lungs at the end of the number that you've chosen. And you're totally empty on air at the end of the count in the next sequence. And so this is very helpful. It helps reduce shallow breathing. It's good for people who are having insomnia with apnea and having to be on CPAP. It's good for people who've destroyed their lungs with tobacco. I mean, the guy that I started off this talk with was a smoker, and that's how he got emphysema and why he had, one of the reasons he had lung trouble together with his heart attack and congestive heart failure. And so this will make you more able to get rid of toxins out of your lungs. So people, when they breathe correctly, do a better job. But when you walk, you tend to breathe correctly. So it's a good time to practice your breathing. All right, there's some times of the day that are more beneficial for walking, especially in the morning. First thing upon rising, before anybody else has breathed the air or... See, overnight the trees make oxygen out of what was produced in the way of carbon dioxide the day before. And so, especially in the morning, you should be out walking, and after each meal. Why after the meals? Well, it takes oxygen to digest food. Remember we said fats take more oxygen, give you an oxygen deficit, and so you eat this meal, and then taking a walk, you'll breathe better, your digestion will be better because your pelvis is going back and forth, you're jogging your insides, you're making it so that the stomach doesn't have to do all the work, it's already getting some help from the jiggling you're causing by walking. And so, so this gentleman that I talked about that we got him off his oxygen, we had him walking every 2 hours through the day. Not just in the morning, not just after meals. I set him up with a schedule. I said, you're not doing anything else. You're disabled. What else are you going to do? Sit there and watch TV? Just every 1 or 2 hours. See how far you can walk. And walk as far, so figure out how far you can walk and come back without stopping. So maybe you can walk to your curb and back without stopping. Okay, do it. Next time, see if you can go to the curb and down to the mailbox and back to the curb and back. Each time, see if you can go a little farther, and if you can't, that's fine. If you get tired and you can only go back to the curb and back, that's all right. But just try to push your limits. Try to increase your walking distance. Try to make it so every time you're adding to what you can do. And That was his, exercise that helped his lungs. Out in nature is the best place to walk. You're going to find things that sort of stimulate your interest, trees and flowers and birds and plants. There's also going to be a lot less pollutions from the city and a lot less stress. People who are out in the countryside have lower blood pressures. You know, high blood pressure isn't good for your lungs. And people who are in the cities are going to have less places to walk because you're always crowding and you don't want to be where it's dangerous and where somebody might do things that aren't great. Now, how you speak, how you use your voice is very important to your lungs. Speaking from your diaphragm, projecting your voice, making sure that you're not breathing from your shoulders or tight around your throat. These are all important for good respiration and good lung activity in talking. I've met people who weren't quite doing it right, and it messed up a lot of stuff for their lungs and their throat and their voice. Clothing is important. She seems like she's a little cool. She's got her arms wrapped around her, and so her arms are probably cold. When your arms are cool, there's going to be a little bit of blood always going out there, but it's going to come back very chilled. It will inflame your lungs. So you want clothing that keeps you warm, with no tight bands around the chest. Studies have shown that, for example, bras limit the amount of air you exchange with every breath. Kind of the opposite of apples, right? Apples increase it, bras decrease it. And that's not good. And they also increase breast cancer. We have a whole talk on cancer in this series that you might want to take in that talks about this. Clothing should be warm, especially on the arms and legs. And if you're going to exercise in cold weather, you want to make sure that you pick clothing appropriate to the environment. And when you protect your arms and legs, you're less likely to get a cold, less likely to get inflammation, less likely to have congestion of the lungs. It also affects whether or not you get bloody noses. People who have their arms bare end up with the blood congested in head, chest, abdomen, pelvis, and they're more likely to get a bloody nose. I had a gentleman who had this problem, and I helped him pack his nose one day. And then I said, you need to start wearing long sleeves. 2 years later, I saw him, and he came up to me, and he says, look at me. I said, oh, hi, and I talked to him. He says, look at me. I says, oh, yeah, He says, what do you see? I'm thinking, I see you. He says, I'm wearing long sleeves, and I haven't had a nosebleed in 2 years. So there's a lot of importance to your clothing and how you breathe. Now, breathing from your lungs requires movement of your abdomen, it requires movement of your chest, and if those are all covered with extra heavy fat, being obese, it's going to put a burden on your lungs. It's going to be harder to bring a breath in, it's going to be harder to keep the lungs happy and healthy, it's going to be harder to keep the lungs from having to deal with oxidized oils, because when you're overweight, you have a lot more oxidized oils running through your body. And obesity is also a risk factor for sleep apnea, especially the obstructive kind. And it's a breathing disorder that happens in your sleep. And so weight loss could be key to making sure that you have good lung function. So, in your body, you have several organs that help you get rid of waste products. Kidneys, liver, lungs, and your skin. In fact, your skin has been described as your second lung. You ever heard that said? Because you do actually interact with your environment through your skin. In Hollywood, if they take and paint a person a funny color for a skit, they have to leave a patch of skin free from this paint on their back, or they will literally start suffocating. They have to have a space where you can have good interaction of your skin with the environment. You want to have your skin clean, and so one of the things that's helpful is to sweat, provoke sweating, get in a sauna, or you can also take care of your skin by scrubbing it with a skin brush. There's a lot of good things you can do for your skin to help it to be cleaner. Taking a shower every morning, washing your skin with what will I say here, soaps and so forth that aren't damaging. What are some soaps that are damaging? Anything with SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate, tends to break down the barriers, tends to reduce the ability of your skin to be a good immune protectant against invaders, tends to increase the likelihood of autoimmune disease. So you want a natural soap, and scrub your skin well, and that will help you to be healthier. It'll make your skin get rid of some of the toxins that would otherwise be left to the lungs, liver, bowels, kidneys to dispense with. And so head for a sauna, drink lots of water. The more water you drink, the more you sweat. The more you sweat, it'll actually be thicker, more toxin-laden sweat the more you drink water. Unlike your urine, the more you drink, the clearer it gets. And so cleansing, you can also do a chelation diet if you need to, skin brushing, a lot of things you can do to stay healthy and clean. Cleaning your house, cleaning the corners in your house, washing the floors, sweeping up dust, making sure dust doesn't accumulate. Dust all tends to harbor microbes, dust mites. Those are all very hard on your lungs, more likely to get asthma, more likely to get inflammation in the lungs. And your lungs need good hydration. Without good hydration, there's poor oxygen exchange going on. Good hydration is a part of just being alive. I mean, people who get low on water, everything in the body gets more concentrated. And so, drinking water. It requires attention to this. Maybe you want to schedule it. I recommend 3 quarts or liters of water a day. One when you get up in the morning, maybe with some fresh squeezed lemon juice in it. One mid-morning, like 2 hours after breakfast. One mid-afternoon, like 2 hours after lunch. And yeah, so what if I get a lung problem? What if I have bronchitis or bronchiectasis, or I have, pneumonia? And well, we won't get into pneumonia, but for lungs that are suffering respiratory tract infections and so forth, a good thing to do is put a pot of water on the steam and then breathe the steam. You can either put your head over a pot like this, or you can take and roll up a newspaper and make yourself a snorkel, a cone going to the steam to breathe it in. You can put in essential oils on that rolled up newspaper to give you an extra benefit from things like eucalyptus or lemon oil or oil of oregano, pine oil, cedar oil. All these are very helpful. It tends to moisten the mucous membranes in the lungs. It mobilizes secretions. If you're having bronchitis or bronchiectasis, it mobilizes it. You start spitting up more stuff. Do it for 5 to 15 minutes and enjoy it. And see if it doesn't help you in your lung care. What about herbs? Well, they often name herbs, at least in their street name, for what they do for you. Lungwort, pulmonaria, is a very good one. It's high in antioxidants, reported to have beneficial impact on lung regeneration. So we tend to tell people to drink a cup or 2 of it a half hour before breakfast and lunch. And eucalyptus, like I said, you can put it there with your steaming, or you can put a couple, drops in one of these vaporizers or atomizers, diffusers, and it has anti-inflammatory effects. It's antioxidant. It dilates the bronchus. It's antiviral and has antimicrobial effects. Eucalyptus improves asthma by significant improvements of lung function, especially asthma at night, and it actually improves life quality scores on studies of people with asthma, and it helps people with COPD. Another thing that's very good for your bronchus. If in your diffuser you put eucalyptus, also put some Epsom salts. Diffused magnesium sulfate has been shown to dilate your bronchioles. And so that would be another thing to consider. I mean, there's a lot of essential oils that you might consider. And peppermint oil, it is good for the lungs, coughs, colds. Tea tree oil for treating infections, colds, influenza, bronchitis. Thyme oil, treatment of mucous membrane inflammation, supportive treatment of whooping cough, for example. There's a lot of essential oils that you could probably look up, but these are some of the top ones, and they're usually readily available. There's some other exotic ones that one could name, but and then any organ in your body, if you want to improve its function, if you want it to become more metabolically active, if you want it to become more healthy, let sunshine hit the skin over it. This is very helpful. It improves blood flow. It improves the antioxidant status. It improves your vitamin D. People with more vitamin D have less lung problems, better lung function. And countries with low sunlight have a higher incidence of lung cancer compared to sunny countries. So get direct sunlight on the chest, on the back, maybe 20 minutes front and back if you have the time. If you don't have time, just wait till you have time when you're sick. And sun exposure every day would be good, and it'll improve your vitamin D levels. For lung health, sleep is essential. With the window open, of course, and getting to bed early. We say 2 hours of sleep before midnight are worth 4 hours of sleep after midnight. People who sleep well have better melatonin. People who sleep well have a better antioxidant status. They're better able to recover from the day's activities. And then there's trust in God, He's the one that provides us with air and water and food and sunshine. And when you trust in Him, the stress level goes down. When the stress levels go down, so do the inflammatory cytokines. Pray for strength to change to a better lifestyle. And claim some promises, seeing He giveth to all life and breath and all things. Thank God for every breath. Thank God for every beat of your heart. And you'll be like our patient who in 2 months went from not being able to walk across the room and on oxygen to walking 1.5 miles per day. Wow. So the mechanism of the human body cannot be fully understood. It presents mysteries that baffle the most intelligent. It is not as a result of a mechanism which, once set in motion, continues its work, that the pulse beats and breath follows breath. In God we live and move and have our being. We can thank Him for everything, the beating heart, the throbbing pulse, every nerve and muscle in the living organism is kept in order and activity by the power of an ever-present God. In summary, if you want to have good lung function, breathe fresh, clean, outdoor air as much as you can. Adjust your diet to support good lung function. Maintain a high level of physical activity outdoors in the fresh air and sunshine. Do breathing exercises that will help your lungs to expand and become more efficient. And if you want to review some of these details, you can either re-watch it here on this channel, or you can go to our website, which is Northern Lights Health Education. On the left-hand side there is presentation handouts. The handout will be the one on natural lung health, and you can read all about this. This has been another episode of Blueprint for Health and Healing, where we are reversing diseases from their foundation. Lung health, a breath of fresh air.